Okay, welcome back to Daily Driven Alpha. Right, just starting to work the sheet metal for the front of the project car, and it's amazing what you can do with just some advice and some basic tools. A decent hammer. We've measured the fold. I'll show you in a second. What we're doing here is we've got a curve in the steel here which we've achieved by pinning it to the bench, hitting it with a grinder to clean it up really hard into some areas here, and what that's done is that's provided some heat in this area, and it's naturally shrunk the steel on this side, and it's allowed it to curve, which you don't normally want, but in this case we do, because it's going to match the curve of the valance on the front of the step nose. So you'll see what we're starting to do here today is this little ridge here, which we've measured. It's just slightly less than 10 millimeters, but we've given ourselves a little bit more to take into account the loss of distance as we fold. And so we're starting that, we're going to work our way across, and then it's going to come the fun part of forming this profile. Because not only do we have to form the profile, we've also got a slight radius going this way. And so the metal is going to want to fight itself as it does that. So basically, we've measured this lip here, measured it and scribed it onto the steel here. I used a couple of straight edges in the vise to just get that initial fold going. But now we've just clamped it, as you can see in the vise, at the right area. And not so hard once you start to get that fold, to stop it from just having a rounded section here. I'm just using a small block of wood and just moving that so that we can get start to get that steel moving in the direction we want, as you can see, right? So still got a little bit to go here, and we'll form that up, so that needs to be at right angles. Then we'll measure a section here, fold this back down, and get the profile. So I'll continue with that, and I'll bring you back and you can have a look and see how we're going. Okay, let's just finish this off a bit more. Let's have a look at that. Right, so now we have a better edge, right? So what we're doing here is replicating this steel here, as you can see. Now we've gone a little bit, we've put a little bit more in there, because my view is that once we actually cut this, we're going to have to actually split this or put a couple of notches in here as we're trying to achieve this radius, because the steel's going to want to fight itself as we put a radius in here. So we'll need to notch it to allow it to move. And there's a little bit of extra height on here, just in case we need to trim it or match it. Easier to take it off than try and put it back on. So that's the curvature that we've achieved so far. What we'll do is we'll fold the next section over while it's flat before we put a radius in, and then we'll see how we go. So let's start that, and then you can see how we go. Okay, now what we're going to do here is use this old template, or the old section, and given that we've already folded this top lip, we can lock that in there, and I'm going to use this as a guide, and it's pretty rough. We're not measuring perfectly, but we know that this is correct. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a line across here which follows the radius a little bit, and you'll see that the actual size of the steel that we're using, that we've cut, has got a significant amount of steel either side. Now that'll come into play when we put it onto the car, because we'll tack all that on and then we're going to cut through the excess and then weld through there to get a perfect fit. We're not going to try and match it perfectly. It's very, very difficult to do that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to mark out, just using a pen, I'm just going to mark out and trace out that sort of line, and I'm giving myself a little bit of extra room there. Now, this isn't, so what we've done is we've just marked a line there, because what we're going to do is try and fold that. In actual fact, I'll need to look at that and just adjust those lines to make sure that they're right, the same distance on each side. So I'll mark that up properly, but we get a rough idea of the radius, and I'm going to use this now to fold. I have to reverse the fold here, go that way, and I found a piece of pipe with a radius in it that's pretty close to what the car is, and we're going to use that pipe as a bit of a guide, and we're going to fold over it to start the first radius we're going, and then we'll use it on the other side later on when I want the reverse radius to get this profile. So what we're doing at the moment is we're just going to start the fold that way and try and get this flat deck going, see what the steel does and whether we need to notch it or not. So let's see how we go. I'll adjust the marking right now, make sure that I'm happy with the distances, and then we'll see if we can fold it that way. Okay, as the saying goes, measure twice, cut once, or in this case, measure 3 times and then fold once, hopefully. You'll see that the rough hand-drawn line that I put in there was way off, just eyeballing it. Secondly, I measured it, and the first line I put in, I've noticed was incorrect, and so I've readjusted. So what we've done is we've measured the distance here on the original, and taken a little bit more than 5.5 millimeters. We've taken 5.5 centimeters. We've taken 6 centimeters to allow for extra steel as it folds and rolls. So what we've done here is done the same thing, measured up to the fold here and come down and given ourselves 6 centimeters. Now that's a little bit more, as you can see, with the radius here, so we'll see how that goes, and we'll start folding along those lines there, and I'm going to use the pipe in the vise, and we'll see how that comes out. Okay, we've started I've put this pipe in the vise with the radius facing the way I wanted to. Just as a tip, always double check which way you're folding to make sure that you're not folding the wrong way. Once you fold the steel, if you try and go back the other way, it's going to be a lot of work to recover it, sometimes almost impossible. So you'll see that we're starting to get that radius now. You've got to do this just slowly. And what I'm doing is I'm leaning in on the top here, which is okay because I want that reverse curve to come in. So I'm going to drive in across the top here to press the steel around the radius of this pipe. And I'm just going to gently work my way along in the vise, and you can see, simple tools, right? You don't need to have, I mean, it helps. If you've got all the gear, great. But if you're doing this yourself with a bit of thought, you can get to where you want to be. So just slowly doing it. I'm not even heating the steel. Maybe that'll help. We'll see how we go. It's fairly cool here today. Let's just get that in. Get that reverse curve going. Let's have a look at that. Right. you can see we're just starting to get that initial curve going there, and we're starting to get the shape in the steel that we want. This is that beautiful bend that you need, that is so iconic on the front of these cars, and it's really hard. Now what I can feel is I can feel the metal starting to fight against itself here, because as we're going round there's going to be a radius here, right? So that's going to be the challenge, is how we work that. But let's work it along and see where we end up. May have to end up putting a cut in here, a couple of notches, just for a bit of relief, and then we can weld that up later. So I'll work this along a little bit further and then show you where we get to. Okay, we're starting to get there. One thing I wasn't checking was the reverse side. This pipe had slipped slightly in the vise, so this hard edge was protruding, and you'll see right there is a dent that I've put in the steel. But that's okay, we'll be able to work that out. I'll be able to tap that out. So I guess one of the lessons learnt, you can see the form starting to come with the reverse curve. Now I'm just using a scrap piece of timber that's got a nice it's soft timber, and it's got rounded edges. So what's happening is it's not driving, it's going to give as I pound on the steel, and it's going to softly curve the metal. So we're continuing to do that. As you can see, the deck's starting to appear here. It's not quite flat, but that's okay. We'll be able to work that, and I can see that it's fighting against itself. It's wanting to twist. Let me work that a little bit further, see if I can get that curve done, and then we might have a look and see how or if it fits the front of the car. I'll be back shortly. Okay, slowly we're getting there, and you can see that reverse curve is starting to come in as well. So while that still needs a little bit more work, I'm relatively happy with that. This side's not too bad. So, moment of truth, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens when we start doing this. Okay, that shows you we're out there. Got too much distance there, so I need to bring that down. So let's see what happens. I'll need to work that and then bring it in with the car. So let's go and just test fit that against the vehicle and see what I've got to do. Okay, just did a quick trial fit. What I've noticed is, we'll see here, distance there is just over 5 centimetres. Over here, way over. We're looking at 6. We're a centimetre out on this side. So what I need to do is I need to fold this back in and drive this down harder on this side so that I can shrink this distance here. So I've got to try and move this back about 1 centimetre, which will be fun. But we're starting to get there. This side is fitting nicely. Obviously that needs to be flat, but we'll flatten that out later. What I want to do is just get it close. So there we go, getting there. Okay, now what we have done is we've put the bumper on the car, and the reason we've done that is we're checking the gaps here between these two panels that have now been opened up and have been able to move to wherever they want. Now, given that this car had some front end damage, fully expected that these panels might move, but they're not too bad. The bumper itself also needs a little bit of work. It's got a very slight twist in it, and it needs to be worked down a little bit. The reason I say that is when we put the half on and we line that up, we have to understand that the heart needs to be above the bumper. There needs to be clearance there. So that needs to come down a bit. Now the other aspect is that we're looking at the angle here, and we'll want to see what this does in relation to this piece of sheet that we've sort of started to work up. So really, for what we're doing now, we can and start to have a look at how that fits. Now this compound curve here is a little bit too rounded, and it needs to be worked further. You can see this has almost got a slight lip that comes up, and this deck at the moment has still got a curve in it. So what we'll do is we'll use a block on this section here in the vise with a smaller diameter solid round bar behind here, and we'll work that down, because what that'll do is it'll flatten it out, and it'll also give us just that slight lip here, that look that we're looking for here, which is that compound round comes up and then flattens out. So it doesn't just come straight out and flatten out, it actually does a little bit of a dip in there by the looks of it. Once we tack this into place, we'll then be able to see how we go, and we've just got to be careful that when we tack it into place that this steel here doesn't start to pull these forward because of the strength of this new steel. So that'll be our next phase, and obviously we have to cut a heart in here as well, but I'm leaving that because that may help us when we do it. It might help open up the steel a bit, and if there is a bit of a compound radius that needs to come this way, that will help us in allowing the steel to move a little bit and relieve itself. So you can see here that there's a couple of these holes for the horizontal bars where the mesh from the grill sits. Now there's the first notch, and I've cut it halfway, so we're actually going to have to notch it there, and there'll be another notch here. So that in itself will also help. But before I start cutting it, let's just see where it ends up. So that's our sort of where we are today. I'll do a little bit more work on this, see how we go. But that's our sort of daily update, if you like, and don't know how we'll go with the heart, the steel in there, so we can have a look. May fit at this stage. No, that's going to take a little bit more work. So that radius there is too high for the heart to go in. So rather than bore you with a lot of hammering and flattening out of steel, you might just enjoy seeing the first stage of the new panel being worked up.